Welcome to your daily news deep dive. Today we're going way beyond the headlines to uncover the deeper connections
And implications
of the MSIP.
of some major news stories that are going to be impacting you. We'll be looking at Trump's latest executive orders. We'll be exploring clean energy, the complexities of clean energy adoption,
And examining.
the consequences, the devastating consequences of increasingly intense weather events.
Yeah, it's crucial to understand that these seemingly disparate stories, they are interwoven. They paint this complex picture
Of a
of the challenges
and
and opportunities we face in a rapidly changing world.
Okay, so let's just start with the political earthquake. That's kind of shaking up the energy and environment sectors. Former President Trump is back in the spotlight, issuing executive orders designed to bolster fossil fuels. He even went so far as to declare a national energy emergency. Yeah, and this move has sparked a lot of debate. Trump argues this is essential for energy independence. But critics fear we're sacrificing long-term environmental health for short-term gains. For example, his order to weaken the Endangered Species Act in order to expedite energy projects is raising all sorts of alarm bells for the survival of species like a North Atlantic right whale.
It seems counterintuitive to roll back environmental protections while the planet is experiencing these increasingly severe weather events like those in 2024.
Well, you're right, the connection between climate change and extreme weather. It's becoming impossible to ignore. 2024 saw a record number of billion-dollar weather disasters, including Hurricane Helene, which was one of the costliest hurricanes ever. And this is really driving home the very real costs of climate change, both in terms of financial damage, but also human life.
Speaking of cost, how does Michael Bloomberg's pledge to cover the U.S.'s Paris Agreement funding fit into all of this? It seems like such a generous act. But is it really a sustainable solution?
It's a fascinating situation. While his commitment is admirable, that does raise these important questions about the role of private individuals in funding global initiatives. Should billionaires be filling the gaps left by governments? What are the implications of this for global governance in the long run?
While those questions are debated, some states are already taking on big oil. California just introduced a bill allowing residents impacted by climate disasters to sue oil companies.
Could be a landmark case. I mean, if successful, it could set a precedent for holding corporations accountable for their contributions to climate change. I mean, the outcome could reshape the legal landscape and influence how we address corporate responsibility for climate impacts across the country.
So on the one hand, we have a push for fossil fuels, and on the other, we're seeing these attempts to hold those industries accountable. It's a confusing time to be trying to navigate the clean energy transition. What are some of the other challenges we're facing in this area?
Well, one thing we're seeing is a rise in fees for electric vehicle owners as gas tax revenue declines. And this is an unintended consequence of the shift to electric vehicles. And it raises concerns about fairness and whether it will hinder EV adoption. Yeah, it's just one example of how even well-intentioned policies can have unforeseen consequences.
Right. It seems like we're punishing people for trying to make eco-conscious choices.
Yeah, and another challenge is ensuring the safety and reliability of these clean energy technologies. The recent fire at one of the world's largest battery storage facilities in California really underscores these concerns. While battery storage is a critical component of a clean energy future, incidents like this highlight the need for rigorous safety measures and ongoing research to ensure the dependability of these systems.
It's a reminder that even as we transition to cleaner energy sources, we have to prioritize safety and address potential risks.
Exactly. Now, returning to the political landscape, Trump's influence extends beyond energy policy. He's wading back into the long-standing battle over California's water management.
What's at the heart of this particular conflict?
Well, Trump's order aims to increase water deliveries to farms, which could potentially divert water from environmental needs. And this could significantly impact endangered species that rely on those water sources, further jeopardizing their survival in a changing climate.
It seems like these executive orders are setting the stage for numerous legal challenges and could have far-reaching consequences for the environment.
Indeed. And those consequences are already being felt around the world. Devastating floods in West and Central Africa, which are being amplified by climate change. They're exacerbating a hunger crisis. This is a tragic illustration of how climate change is not a future threat. It's a present reality impacting the lives of millions globally.
And speaking of present realities, how does the recent H5N9 bird flu outbreak in California fit into this picture?
Well, the emergence of new and potentially dangerous strains of bird flu is a growing concern, and it could be potentially linked to the disruptions of climate change on ecosystems. It underscores the unpredictable nature of these impacts and highlights the importance of preparedness and global health surveillance.
This news cycle is already feeling incredibly heavy. Is there anything positive happening amidst all this turmoil?
Absolutely. Let's shift gears
Mm-hmm.
and explore some of the inspiring stories emerging from the front lines of climate action and innovation.
I'm all ears. Let's end this part of our deep dive on a more optimistic note.
Okay, well, three major corporations, GSK, Wholesome, and Keurig, have committed to science-based targets for nature, aiming to reduce their environmental footprint and protect biodiversity. This is a powerful example of corporate responsibility and demonstrates that sustainability and profitability can go hand in hand.
It's encouraging to see big businesses taking concrete steps
Yeah.
towards environmental protection, especially when some political leaders seem to be moving in the opposite direction.
Indeed, another inspiring story comes from Kentucky, where a project is relocating flood survivors to higher ground, repurposing former strip mines for safe housing. This innovative approach is not only providing much-needed relief, but it's also transforming previously degraded land into a haven for those displaced by climate disasters.
It's a remarkable example of turning a problem into an opportunity, finding creative solutions in the face of adversity.
Absolutely. And speaking of turning problems into opportunities, a Denver nonprofit is transforming vacant city lots into flourishing food forests. These urban gardens not only provide fresh produce for the community, but they also help mitigate the urban heat island effect. This initiative addresses multiple challenges simultaneously, demonstrating the power of community-driven solutions.
These stories are a much-needed reminder that even amidst the chaos and uncertainty of the news, there are individuals and organizations working tirelessly to create a more sustainable and just future.
Indeed. And their efforts deserve our attention and support.
I think that's a good place to pause for now.
No.
We've covered a lot of ground already.
Indeed. When we return, we'll delve into some of the quieter, but equally important news stories that often fly under the radar. Sometimes. The most significant shifts, they happen quietly, beneath the surface of all those attention-grabbing headlines.
I'm here. Ready to dive deeper. What kind of undercurrents are we talking about?
We'll take, for example, Indonesia's plan to phase out coal by 2040. Now, it might not have the same immediate impact as Trump's executive orders, but it signifies a major shift in a country heavily reliant on coal.
So like a potential domino effect.
In the global energy landscape.
Exactly, but as countries move away from fossil fuels, the need for viable alternatives becomes even more critical. And this brings us back to the clean energy challenges we were talking about earlier.
I'm starting to understand that transitioning.
So cleaner energy sources, it's like navigating this maze. There are all these unexpected twists and turns.
Precisely. That California battery storage facility fire is a prime example. It really highlights the importance of prioritizing safety and reliability as we scale up these clean energy technologies.
And then there's the issue of the funding for this infrastructure.
Yeah.
It seems so short-sighted to increase fees on electric vehicle owners.
Yeah.
Just as more people are adopting them.
It does. It does raise questions about fairness.
Yeah.
And the long-term consequences of such policies. As gas tax revenues continue to decline, we really need innovative solutions for funding our transportation infrastructure without discouraging the adoption of cleaner technologies.
It's like we need a complete overhaul of how we think about and fund public goods in a world that's transitioning away from fossil fuels.
Yeah, we need a system that incentivizes clean technologies while making sure everyone contributes fairly. We need to build public trust by addressing concerns about the safety and reliability of these new technologies.
Speaking of safety, that project, relocating flood survivors to higher ground in Kentucky using former strip mines, seems like such an innovative approach to adapting.
Increasing risk of floods.
It is. It is a remarkable example of proactive adaptation, turning what was once a source of environmental damage into a haven for those displaced by climate change. It also highlights the need for these creative solutions to the very real threat of these increasingly frequent and severe weather events.
It's a hopeful story amidst some pretty bleak news, like the new strain of bird flu detected in California.
The emergence of new diseases, that could be potentially linked to climate change's disruption of ecosystems really underscores the interconnectedness of environmental health and human health. That we need to be prepared for the unpredictable consequences of a changing climate.
Discussing proactive measures. How is Canada responding to climate action in the second Trump era? Well, despite the challenges posed by the U.S. federal government's policies, Canada remains committed to climate action. They're forging partnerships with subnational leaders in the U.S., such as states and cities, to continue making progress.
That's a strategic approach, recognizing that climate action isn't limited to national governments.
Exactly. And it's a model that could be replicated globally, empowering regional and local entities to drive change.
It's encouraging to see these pockets of progress. It's easy to feel powerless amid so much political turbulence and the growing impacts of climate change.
We can't afford to succumb to despair or cynicism. Now more than ever, we need to stay engaged, we need to hold our leaders accountable, and we need to support those who are working towards a better future.
Speaking of those working towards a better future, the groundswell of activism pushing for climate justice is impossible to ignore.
These movements are powerful forces for change. From youth climate strikes to indigenous-led movements protecting their land and water, we're witnessing a groundswell of activism demanding a just transition to a clean energy future.
They're not just protesting, they're organizing, they're educating, and pushing for policy changes at all levels of government.
They're also building community resilience, supporting those most impacted by climate change, and offering a vision for a more just and sustainable world.
Their energy and passion are contagious. It's truly inspiring to see so many diverse groups coming together, united by a shared goal of protecting our planet.
They're demonstrating that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable obstacles, hope and action are still possible. Now let's examine some of the strategies that these movements are employing to achieve their goal.
I'm particularly interested in that California bill. That could allow residents to sue oil companies for climate change-related damages.
That bill is a significant development in the fight for climate justice. I mean, if successful, it could set a precedent for holding corporations accountable for their contributions.
It's a climate change. It's a bold legal strategy. Are there other legal avenues being pursued?
We're also seeing lawsuits against governments for failing to take adequate action on climate change. And these cases can be long and arduous, but they can force those in power to take notice and create lasting change.
It's encouraging to see legal action being taken to address climate change. But it's not the only tool at our disposal.
You're right. Climate activists are utilizing a range of strategies, from creative storytelling and art to music and community organizing.
These both can be incredibly impactful, helping to reach people on an emotional level and inspire action.
They can. They can also help to reframe the narrative around climate change, shifting away from doom and gloom and showcasing a vision for a more hopeful and just future. Now, while we're discussing solutions, let's delve into the innovations that are driving the transition to a more sustainable future.
I'm eager to learn more about the technological advancements, the policy solutions, and the community-led initiatives that are paving the way.
We're seeing a surge in renewable energy technologies like solar and wind power, coupled with advances in energy storage and smart grids.
These technologies are becoming more affordable and efficient. But it's not just about generating clean energy, is it?
You're right. We also need to focus on using energy more efficiently, reducing waste, and developing sustainable transportation systems.
This story about the SARA, rapid improvement in electric vehicle reliability. It's a promising sign.
Absolutely. As EVs become more reliable and affordable, they're poised to significantly reduce emissions from the transportation sector.
And with
the development of fast charging infrastructure. And these innovative battery technologies, range anxieties, it's becoming a thing of the past.
It's remarkable to see how quickly these technological advancements are happening. But as we embrace these technologies, we can't forget the importance of protecting our natural ecosystems.
You bring up a critical point. Nature plays a vital role in regulating our climate, providing clean air and water, and supporting biodiversity. Yet we're facing a global biodiversity crisis driven by climate change, habitat loss,
and pollution.
Yeah.
That story about botanic gardens facing a space crisis. As extinction risks rise is alarming.
It is. It is a stark reminder of the urgency of addressing the biodiversity crisis. Botanic gardens play a crucial role in conserving endangered plant species. But they're struggling to keep up with the accelerating rate of extinction.
Yeah.
We need greater investment in conservation efforts to protect the incredible diversity of life on our planet.
So while we're focusing on the technology and policy, we can't lose sight of the natural world.
And the urgent need to protect it.
It's all interconnected. Protecting nature is essential for addressing the climate crisis and creating a sustainable future. Now, shifting gears slightly, let's consider the ethical and philosophical dimensions
of climate change.
I'm ready to explore
the moral implications of our actions and the responsibility we bear to future generations.
Climate change is more than a scientific or economic issue. It's a moral issue that challenges our values and our sense of justice. It compels us to confront these difficult questions about our relationship with the planet.
And the legacy that we're leaving behind.
I read a fascinating piece about how African philosophers view individual efforts to address climate change. It argued that even small actions have more influence than we realize.
That's a powerful perspective. It underscores our interconnectedness and emphasizes that we all have a responsibility to act, even if our individual efforts seem insignificant.
It's a call to embrace a sense of collective responsibility, acknowledging that we're all in this together.
Indeed. And that collective responsibility extends beyond individual actions. Governments have a critical role to play in shaping our response to climate change.
Absolutely. They need to set targets. They need to enact regulations and invest in solutions, create a framework for effective climate action.
They also need to ensure a just transition, supporting workers and communities that are impacted by the shift away from fossil fuels.
That story about states charging electric vehicle owners higher fees to compensate for. Shrinking gas tax revenue is a perfect example
of the challenges
of this transition.
It highlights the need for sustainable funding mechanisms as we move away from gas-powered vehicles, ensuring fairness and equity in the process.
A reminder that policy decisions can have unintended consequences and that we need to carefully consider the impacts on all communities.
We need strong government policies to guide our collective efforts. A level playing field. But we can't rely solely on governments to address this global crisis. Businesses and investors also have a crucial role to play.
Let's explore those economic forces that are shaping our response to climate change.
Climate change presents both significant risks and opportunities for businesses and investors. The costs of inaction are mounting as we witness the increasing frequency
and severity of climate-related disasters.
There's that report stating that the planet experienced $58 billion weather disasters in 2024, the second highest on record, is a stark reminder of the economic toll of climate change. Those costs extend beyond financial damage. We're talking about damage to infrastructure, loss of life, and disruptions to supply chains.
But within these challenges, there are also opportunities emerging from the clean energy transition.
The renewable energy sector is booming. It's creating jobs, driving innovation, and attracting investment. It's a dynamic and rapidly growing sector with immense potential.
I found that story about Chevron trying to capitalize on the AI boom by selling electricity to data centers. Intriguing.
This is a prime example of how even traditional energy companies are recognizing the shift in the energy landscape and adapting to the growing demand for clean energy.
It seems like we're at a critical juncture where economic forces are aligning with the need for climate action.
Indeed, the climate crisis presents both risks as opportunities, and it's up to us to make smart choices that prioritize sustainability and long-term prosperity.
As we discuss these economic considerations, it's essential to acknowledge that the impacts of climate change aren't felt equally by all.
You're absolutely right. We need to address the issue of climate justice and the disproportionate impact of climate change on vulnerable communities.
Climate change exacerbates existing inequalities, and those who have contributed the least to the problem often bear the brunt of the consequences.
This is a grave injustice, and it demands our attention and our action.
That story about Trump's plans to boost fossil fuel production potentially harming Black communities. Is a stark example
Yes.
of how policy decisions could have disparate impacts on
Well,
marginalized communities.
it's a reminder that equity and justice must be at the forefront of our climate policies.
Yeah.
We need to ensure that the transition to a clean energy future benefits all communities,
needs
not
to
just the
extend it.
wealthy and privileged.
And that sense of justice needs to extend beyond.
Our borders,
Yeah,
we must consider the global impacts of climate change, recognizing that developing countries are often the most vulnerable to the effects of a warming planet. The devastating floods in West and Central Africa, exacerbating a regional hunger crisis, really highlight the interconnectedness of climate change, poverty, and food security.
It's a tragic reminder that climate change isn't just an environmental issue. It's a human rights issue demanding our compassion and our action.
We have a moral obligation to support those most impacted by climate change and work towards a more just and equitable world for all.
And there are individuals and organizations working tirelessly to advance climate justice around the world.
Let's shift our focus to those fighting for climate justice, empowering communities, and advocating for a more equitable future.
From grassroots organizations to international networks, there are countless groups tackling this ethical dimension.
We're providing legal aid, advocating for policy changes, and supporting communities on the front lines of the climate crisis.
That story about environmental justice advocates in New York City, faulting a statewide plan for renewable energy development is a prime example.
It highlights the importance of community engagement and making sure that clean energy projects benefit all communities, not just select few.
It's about making sure that the transition to a clean energy future leaves no one behind.
These individuals and organizations are the heart and soul of the climate movement. Their voices deserve to be heard, and their efforts deserve our support.
Absolutely. Now, let's delve into some of the strategies and approaches that these groups are using to achieve their goals.
Well, we're seeing a range of tactics and tools being employed to advance climate justice, from community organizing to legal advocacy.
We've already discussed the lawsuits against corporations and governments, but what about at the community level?
Community organizing is a powerful tool for empowering marginalized communities and advocating for change.
The story about parents in L.A. raising concerns over wildfire ash risks as schools reopen
is a good example. It highlights the importance of protecting children's health and making sure that disaster recovery efforts prioritize vulnerable populations. It's also a reminder that climate impacts can have long-lasting consequences. We need to invest in long-term solutions that address the root causes of vulnerability and promote equitable outcomes.
These efforts to protect children are crucial. They are the most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change.
We will inherit the world we leave behind.
Exactly. And it's not just about protecting children, it's about ensuring a just and equitable future for all generations. Now let's shift our focus to the psychological and emotional toll of climate change.
I'm ready to explore the human experience of this crisis and how people are coping.
And with the emotional weight of it all.
Climate change is no longer an abstract concept for many. It's a lived reality impacting people's lives in profound ways.
The hammer. The trauma of experiencing these extreme weather events coupled with the anxiety of an uncertain future is taking a toll on mental health.
That story about LA fire victims becoming dysregulated, struggling to focus and make decisions, highlights the profound psychological impacts of climate disaster.
It's heartbreaking to think about the emotional burden that these individuals carry. We need to prioritize mental health, but for those struggling in the aftermath of such events.
Absolutely. And we also need to recognize that climate change can exacerbate existing mental health challenges and that we need to build more resilient communities equipped to support each other.
Beyond the immediate trauma of disasters, there are also
psychological barriers to action on climate change, like denial, apathy, and a sense of helplessness.
These barriers can be difficult to overcome, but we need to acknowledge them
and find ways
to address them, focusing on
solutions
and empowering people. Two, to take action, however small, is a good starting point.
Building community connections and creating spaces For people to share their experiences and support each other is also crucial.
And of course, practicing self-care
And that.
and finding healthy ways
To cope.
with the emotional weight of climate change is vital.
We need to cultivate compassion, empathy, and resilience. We need to support each other through this challenging time.
Amidst all this, I'm encouraged by the stories of resilience and adaptation. People around the world are finding ways to cope with the impacts of climate change and build
Hey,
a more sustainable future.
let's turn our attention to these beacons of hope, highlighting the communities that are adapting to the changing climate and forging a path toward...
From coastal communities, building seawalls, to farmers adopting drought-resistant crops, people are finding innovative ways to navigate the challenges of a changing climate.
These efforts might not always be easy
Right.
or successful, but they demonstrate human ingenuity, determination, and an unwavering commitment to survival.
That Kentucky project, relocating flood survivors to higher ground on former strip mines, is an inspiring example.
It exemplifies creative problem solving, turning what was once a source of environmental harm into a place of refuge. It also underscores that adaptation often requires thinking outside the box.
And embracing innovative solutions.
There are countless other examples of community-led adaptation happening around the world, from rainwater harvesting systems to coastal ecosystem restoration.
These efforts are often rooted in a deep connection to place.
Oh, yeah.
And a desire to protect the livelihoods and cultures of future generations.
They embody the spirit of human resilience.
And our capacity to adapt and thrive in the face of adversity.
These stories are powerful reminders that even amidst the daunting reality of climate change, hope exists.
Now let's delve into some of the specific adaptation strategies being implemented globally.
Let's explore the diverse strategies that are being employed to reduce vulnerability and build resilience in the face of climate change.
From engineering solutions, nature-based approaches, there's a whole toolbox of options for communities looking to adapt to a changing climate.
These strategies need to be tailored to the specific challenges of each region and community, considering factors like geography, climate, and socioeconomic conditions.
That story about the project addressing environmental justice concerns in New York City, as Right as the Garbage is a great example of how these considerations play out.
It highlights the importance of equity and justice in adaptation efforts. The benefits of climate action must be shared widely, and marginalized communities must not be left behind.
Adaptation is not just about physical infrastructure, it's about social and economic resilience, empowering communities to face the challenges of a changing climate.
Absolutely. There are numerous examples of adaptation strategies that prioritize social and economic resilience, like community-based disaster preparedness programs
And initiatives promoting
sustainable livelihoods.
These efforts build community capacity, reduce vulnerability, and contribute to a more equitable and just future.
And it's not just about responding to current climate impacts. It's about anticipating future risks and planning for long-term change.
That's a sad story about Virginia lawmakers proposing legislation to address climate impacts, including rising sea levels and extreme weather events is a good example of this forward-thinking approach.
This proactive approach to adaptation is essential. It allows communities to prepare for future challenges
and minimize potential harm. It also highlights the vital role of government policy in supporting adaptation efforts and creating a framework for long-term resilience.
While the impacts of climate change are already being felt globally, we can take proactive steps to adapt and build a more resilient future.
It's about recognizing the risks, planning for the long term, and collaborating to create solutions that benefit all members of our communities.
Adaptation is not just about surviving climate change. It's about thriving in the face of adversity and building a more just and sustainable world.
Now, let's reflect on the successes and failures
of past adaptation initiatives. What are the key lessons learned and the emerging challenges we need to address?
Adaptation is an ongoing process, and we're continuously learning from both our successes
and our mistakes. We've learned
the critical importance
of community engagement and tailoring adaptation strategies to meet local needs and priorities.
We've also seen the value of of nature-based solutions
Yeah.
like wetland restoration and tree planting, which offer multiple benefits, including flood control, carbon sequestration, and biodiversity conservation. And we've learned that we must address the root causes of vulnerability, including poverty, inequality, and discrimination.
However, significant challenges remain. We need to scale up adaptation efforts to match the accelerating impacts of climate change.
We also need to be wary of maladaptation, where strategies unintentionally increase vulnerability or create new problems.
And we must ensure that adaptation efforts are equitable and just, benefiting all members of our communities.
Well, we've made progress in adapting to climate change. There's still much work to be done.
A continuous process of learning, adapting, and striving for a more resilient and sustainable future.
We need to approach adaptation with humility, recognizing the complexity of the challenges and the need for ongoing collaboration and innovation.
Let's turn our attention to the frontiers of adaptation, exploring the latest technologies, approaches, and ideas that are shaping this field.
From artificial intelligence to biomimicry, there's a growing arsenal of tools and techniques being applied to
climate adaptation.
These innovations are helping us to better understand climate risks, develop more effective adaptation strategies, and build more resilient communities.
That story about how AI is being used to predict and manage wildfire risks is fascinating.
Yeah, AI-powered tools can analyze vast amounts of data, identify patterns, and provide early warnings of potential wildfires.
This information can help firefighters prepare and respond more effectively, reducing the risk of damage
and loss of life.
And it's just one example of how technology is being harnessed to bolster climate adaptation efforts.
The field of biomimicry, where engineers and designers draw inspiration from nature, more resilient infrastructure, is also incredibly exciting.
Imagine buildings with self-cooling systems inspired by termite mounds, coastal defenses mimicking the structure of mangrove forests.
These nature-inspired solutions are often more sustainable and resilient than traditional approaches, offering a glimpse into the future of climate adaptation.
Despite the daunting challenges of climate change, there's a sense of excitement, optimism in the field of adaptation.
There's a growing community of
researchers,
practitioners,
and innovators dedicated to finding solutions
and building a more resilient future.
Their efforts are truly inspiring, giving us hope that we can adapt to a changing climate and build a world that is both sustainable and just.
Now let's consider the role that individuals play in climate adaptation and what we can do to build resilience in our own lives
and communities.
While government policies and technological advancements are crucial, individual actions are equally important.
From making our homes more energy efficient
to reducing our water consumption. Because individual actions can minimize our vulnerability to climate impacts
and build resilience. That story about a Denver nonprofit transforming vacant lots into lush food forests is a fantastic example.
It shows how individuals can come together
to create green spaces, grow food, and enhance community resilience.
It's a reminder that adaptation isn't just about responding to risks. It's about creating a more sustainable and just world for all.
There are countless examples of individual actions making a difference, from volunteering with environmental organizations to advocating for climate-smart policies.
These seemingly small actions can have a ripple effect, leading to meaningful change. But climate change is a global issue. We all have a role to play in building resilience.
It's about making informed choices, taking action, and collaborating to create
a more sustainable future.
And it's a reminder that even in the face of adversity, human ingenuity and determination can prevail.
Let's delve deeper into some of the specific actions that individuals can take to adapt to climate change
and build resilience. Let's open up our individual adaptation toolbox, providing practical tips and resources for our listeners to make a difference in their own lives and communities.
You're preparing for extreme weather events to reducing our carbon footprint. There are concrete steps. We can all take
to adapt to a changing climate and build a more sustainable future.
These actions may seem small, but they can have a significant impact, Both.
Cleanse you
Both
within.
individually and collectively.
There's that story about the new PragerU video questioning the link
Oh,
between extreme weather
and climate change.
So it underscores the importance of critical thinking and seeking out reputable sources of information when it comes to climate change.
It also reminds us that diverse perspectives exist on this issue, and engaging in respectful dialogue and considering different viewpoints is crucial.
Although we may not always agree on the causes or the solutions, we can all agree on the importance of protecting our planet and securing a safe and healthy future.
So let's focus on the actions we can take, individually and collectively,
to build a more resilient
and sustainable world.
Here are a few practical tips. Prepare for extreme weather by
developing
an emergency plan, having a go bag ready, and knowing your evacuation routes.
Reduce your carbon footprint by driving less, opting for energy efficient appliances, and choosing sustainable products.
Support climate smart policies by contacting your elected officials, voting for candidates who prioritize climate action, and advocating for change in your community.
Get involved with local organizations addressing climate change and building resilience.
And educate yourself and others about climate change, its impacts, and the solutions available.
These actions might seem small, but they can make a big difference.
It's about taking responsibility, making informed choices, and working together to create a more sustainable
and just future. No.
Now let's reflect on the broader implications of everything we've discussed.
As we've kind of gone through all this news, one recurring theme that keeps coming up is this urgent need for systemic change.
We can't just keep addressing the symptoms, right? We need to rethink our relationship with the planet and each other.
Fundamental shift away from the systems that have brought us to this point.
Moving from this. Extraction and exploitation. Regeneration.
And equity.
Yeah.
Huge, almost overwhelming. I mean, is that even achievable?
It is a monumental task for sure, but not impossible. It starts with a change in mindset, values, even our definition of what is a thing. A lot of people are grappling with those questions,
especially
as the impact of climate change becomes more and more undeniable.
It's like an awakening. Realizing that everything is connected, and that acting for the greater good it's not optional anyway.
And we're seeing this shift play out at different levels, from personal lifestyle choices to for organized movements that are pushing for systemic change. The rising popularity of the degrowth movement is a good example of this. It challenges that idea, that infinite economic growth, sustainable or even desirable.
There's also this growing appreciation for indigenous knowledge and practices.
Those traditional ways of knowing and being, they hold invaluable insights into living in harmony with nature. They offer like a roadmap for a more sustainable future.
So if we dare to imagine, what could that future look like?
Imagine a world powered by renewable energy with clean and efficient transportation systems, communities that are
resilient to the impact of climate change.
A world where biodiversity flourishes, natural resources are managed sustainably, and everyone has access to clean air, clean water, and a healthy environment.
A world where equity and justice drive decision-making and every community thrives.
A world where we've moved beyond this endless pursuit of material wealth and embraced a more holistic understanding of well-being. A world where we've rediscovered our connection to nature and to each other, recognizing our shared humanity and responsibility to share for this planet.
It's both possible and necessary. A future worth fighting for.
Absolutely. And while it may seem distant, remember that every action, no matter how small it may seem, it pushes us in the right direction.
Reducing our carbon footprint, supporting climate smart policies, even just talking to friends and family about climate change. It all adds up.
As we've seen, there's this growing global movement of individuals and communities dedicated to
creating that sustainable and just future.
They are the beacons of hope, the agents of change, and a source of inspiration for all of us. So
let's keep learning, keep acting, and keep supporting each other on this critical journey.
Let's embrace the challenges and the opportunities that are before us, knowing that together we can build a world worthy of future generations. This This deep dive has been a whirlwind. We've explored the intricate and interconnected aspects of the climate crisis.
From the political and economic forces, to the grassroots movements, and the technological innovations. It's been a lot of process.
But amidst all the data and analysis, it's the human stories of resilience, innovation, and hope that really stick with us.
Those stories give me optimism and the belief that we can overcome these challenges and build a brighter future.
A future worth striving for. A future we create together.
Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and most importantly, stay hopeful.
Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep taking action. The future is in our hands.
Let's make it a future that we can all be proud of.